in terms of my decision to enter the field, it was sort of like a natural extension of a life in Goa, where when you're in Goa, like unlike when you've been brought up in a city like Bangalore or Bombay, where you have to make an excursion to go like to a far off area, in Goa, like living here, Miramar is our colony beach, and this is like an experience that is common to all Goans from all walks of life. I think two important aspects of what really shaped a passion was that when I was very young, my father introduced us to wildlife in a slightly more pointed way. When we like went for a series of camps, this is not only my dad, but my family has been very outdoor oriented. I come from a family where I had very strong influences of my grandmothers and my aunts, and even my mother, despite her having polio, used to come to the forest with us. And there are even, she can't do it anymore physically, but even a long time ago she even came on a tube on a river in Mole. Yeah, so I have a very strong influence of people who are just passionate about a life in Goa, and an extension of that was going to a camp where the lifestyle associated with that camp was very different. So there was very, very basic food and very basic stay. And that also gave us the opportunity to really focus on what would your senses be like if you like truly opened up to nature without any distractions of like your cell phone or that time cell phones didn't exist, but without any other distractions. And like what if you just opened up all your senses, and what would that translate to in terms of what nature has to take for you? And that really for me it was something that was very personally motivating, because there were like, I remember writing in my masters, when I applied for my masters in wildlife biology and conservation, I remember writing about this special bird that I had seen called the Malabar trogon, which was found in the Western Ghats, and it's this bird that skulks around that you can't very well see, but it's also red in color, and it has like some facial hair, and it's very interesting to see. I remember writing about that in my statement of purpose, and I remember also trying to tell tiger biologists that seeing this bird and being in this WWF camp was very important, but many of them didn't get it. They were like, oh, this bird. But then I also trace it back to just being immersed in Goa and just having, like a lot of Goans having the opportunity to be with nature on a daily basis. Beyond my family and beyond like the experiences that I have, one of the things that drives me is just how lucky all of us in Goa are to have the opportunities that we have. And especially in the lockdown, you see that there are so many people from all across India, where a lot of these spaces have failed the general populace in other parts of India, have come to enjoy what we have fought for and what we have really worked towards, right? So when there are ill-conceived projects that are hastily passed without due diligence, I just look at myself as one of those Goans who can't just look at it and be like, that's how things are. So that is what my motivation is, and my motivation also is drawn from a great sense of citizenship that I see from young people, that has been learned over generations. And you look at it like even from the 70s and the 80s, the Nylon 666 movement and all, it was not really about environmental activists coming together, it was about Goans saying that this is the Goa that we want and this is the Goa that we love. And I see my work as an extension of that. Like my days of work are obviously very different. So when days of work, when I'm off field, it's like I'm at my computer processing data. But when my day, like an office day in field, is usually like when sometimes I'm in the Northeast and all, is usually waking up in the morning, having what would be the equivalent of lunch here, having it for breakfast, but at like 5:30 in the morning. And then just starting out with your day with a GPS, binoculars, field notebook, lead socks, long sleeves and long pants to avoid getting bitten by ticks and leeches and mosquitoes. And then setting out into the forest with enough of water, and just ensuring that you have a torch, and setting out and collecting data, and being totally also present in the landscapes that you are and in the forests that you are in, and collecting data, also being totally present, because there can be things that go wrong in the field, like occupational hazards. But often it's related to something that is often that you don't plan very well, and not related to like animals pose a direct danger to your life on a daily basis. Yeah, a lot of my work during my PhD and my master's focused on animals, and focused on how animals respond to certain changes in habitats, and why some animals are found where they are found. And one of the things I really wanted to take time to do, given that my PhD was mostly completed and mostly done with a lot of help that I received with my colleagues and partners on the field, but I never really got the chance to tell their stories about how they lived and experienced in the forest in a way that taught me so much and really enriched my understanding of biodiversity. So one of the things that I wanted to do after my PhD was to understand the aspect of how people look at a protected area over time. So what is their relationship with the protected area over time? Because often when you're going into a forest, like even if you go into Mole, it's easy to forget that actually many people lived there. There were settlements that were there, and some of them have been rehabilitated in other places. But it doesn't mean that people do not have a relationship with the forest that exists, right? They have memories, and they have visual artifacts, they have memorabilia, they have emotions that are related to these forests. So what I wanted to do with the Eagle Nest Memory Project is I wanted to recreate the history of a forest. So I authored it, and then I had an illustrator who was the main, she did the drawing. She's from Shorao, her name is Anjora Norona. So we did field work in these forests, interviewing people. And so the book was really about, how do you remember your forests, and how do you remember forests in the way that you want to remember forests, not a way that somebody is saying, hey, this is how you should remember your forest, or once upon a time you were doing that, but in a way where it's your lived experience, it's your lived voice. And I think that's also very important, because in India and in other parts of the world too, there have been a lot of people who have faced the brunt of conservation issues and conservation related displacements, right, who have never got the chance to tell their story. So the Eagle Nest Memory Project just wanted to, in a sense, be sensitive to that context and be able to bring out first person narratives of some of the people who cherish their forests. It's an ode to nature, like it's an ode to, like, one of the best canvases that we have to work with, where there's there's a surprise every day. There are people who reach out and say, I really care about this, is there a way I can help out? But I'm definitely very energized to see what has happened in the last 2 years with respect to Mole, and with respect to how young people have come together to use their voice in multiple ways, which is not necessarily related to like you being an environmentalist or you being a green activist, but you being an artist, you being a musician, you being a student, you being somebody who wants to take your ice box, or somebody who wants to just be out in nature. So that is definitely something that I find very uplifting, and people willing to take the next step. I may be optimistic about it, but I do think that maybe there is an idea of Goa, and there is maybe in the lockdown, that is something that we don't want to let go as easily, especially because green spaces and having an access to a place like Goa is sort of becoming more like a premium to be able to be a Goan and to be able to just live here. Yeah. I think one of the greatest challenges our field is facing right now is that the deregulation of environmental laws that are being seen by the government, which is also a mismatch of what very many young people want. from their spaces. And I think that is one of the deregulation of some very, very important laws which have been and are very progressive with respect to wildlife and environmental protection, including things like better regulations with respect to pollution, stricter mandates with respect to due diligence when forests are diverted. I think that is one of the greatest challenges that we face in the last 5 to 10 years. When you look at civics and how civics is taught in school, or how civics is translated in school, right? It's so tangential and it's so, in some ways, so opaque, right? What does the right to life mean in the context of the environment? How do we think about our constitutional duties, right? And how do we think about our constitutional rights, and what do we express? It's not changed over time, and I think schools and many other places need to really come up to speed with that. And I don't know if it's by design or not by design. They haven't, because I think when you have a group of people who are more aware, they are basically asking more questions, and they are making people and they are making structures more uncomfortable, which might be a rate limiting step in terms of why we are not seeing schools and colleges match up to what should actually be done. So you look at, like, there are emerging models. For instance, there is an educator, Yuvan, who works in Tamil Nadu, and he works with students from class 11 and class 12 on aspects of citizenship. So how do you file an RTI, right? How do you write a letter to a government officer? How do you demand a certain set of services that are due to you? And that is part of some curriculum that he is developing. And I see, like, it should not be Yuvan who's just in Tamil Nadu who's doing that, but it should be the normal of what we're doing. And if we're not doing that, we should be asking, why aren't we all learning this? This is a debate that runs in our field, like, should a scientist talk to power, or should a scientist talk to society? And if you go back to the original definition of what activism is a subset of trying to institute social and political change, right? And if my science and if some of my research does not contribute to that, then how am I going to be a contributing member to society, right, as a scientist? So I don't look at it as whether it's activism or not. I just look at it as that I'm a scientist and I'm a citizen, and I want to be fact-based, and I want to be sensitive to multiple considerations and multiple contexts.